My wife said I was boring after I paid for her lifestyle. So I moved out, took the dog, and let her beg on TikTok. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and I've been married to Sarah for 5 years. When we first met, it felt like fate. I was 25, just starting my career after college, and she was this vibrant, adventurous woman who seemed to have it all figured out. She was ambitious, always smiling, a free spirit who loved life. I was drawn to her energy, her boldness. It felt like she was the missing piece to my puzzle. At first, everything seemed perfect. We had long talks about our future, about the dreams we'd chase together. She talked about owning a big house, traveling the world, and having a life filled with excitement and comfort. She had big aspirations, and I loved that about her. I felt like I could give her everything she wanted. I worked harder than ever to make sure we could afford the lifestyle she dreamed of. It wasn't easy, but I was committed. I'd come home after long days at the office, sit at the dinner table, and listen to her talk about all the things she wanted. New clothes, the latest tech gadgets, that new vacation spot. And I'd make it happen. Little by little, I gave her all the things she asked for. I didn't mind. She deserved it, right? She had this incredible energy, and I admired that. But something began to change. I didn't notice it at first, but as the months went by, I started feeling like I was losing myself. Sarah seemed more distant. She wasn't as affectionate as she used to be. The light-hearted conversations we once had were replaced by a quiet tension. And yet, I kept going. I kept working hard, buying her the things she wanted, believing that if I just worked harder, everything would go back to how it was. I had no idea then, but I was unknowingly preparing myself for a storm I couldn't even see coming. Things didn't change overnight, but the shift was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. It started with little things, small remarks that I brushed off as her being tired or stressed. She'd mention how she wanted to go to more fancy restaurants, or how her friends had the latest handbags, and I'd nod, thinking nothing of it. It wasn't unusual for Sarah to have grand ideas, but she always followed through, and I admired that about her. But the more she talked about these things, the more it felt like the love we once shared was fading. It wasn't just the material things anymore, it was the way she spoke to me. Little jabs here and there, like when she'd mention how boring my weekend hobbies were or how predictable I had become. At first, I laughed it off, trying to pass it off as her being playful, but deep down, I started to feel something stirring in me. I tried to keep the peace, kept working long hours and planned weekend getaways, hoping we could reconnect. But no matter what I did, she seemed less and less interested. I could feel the emotional distance growing, and I couldn't figure out why. I tried asking her about it, but the answers I got only made things worse. "I'm fine," she'd say with a shrug. "I just think you're not as exciting as you used to be." That hurt more than I expected. I started questioning everything. Had I changed that much? Was I no longer the man she fell in love with? She'd say things like, "I just want more out of life," and I felt like I was failing her. I worked harder. I tried to be more spontaneous, but nothing seemed to click. I could feel her slipping away, and the more I tried to hold on, the further she drifted. I was losing her, and the worst part was, I didn't know how to stop it. I'll never forget the night it all came crashing down. It was one of those rare, quiet evenings, the kind where I thought we'd finally get a break from the chaos of life. We had dinner at a nice restaurant, one of her favorites. I thought maybe this was the night we'd reconnect, finally talk things through, but it wasn't. We were sitting there, eating our food, and she looked up at me, almost in passing, and said it. "You know, I don't really think you're exciting anymore. You're kind of boring." It hit me like a punch in the gut. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. I didn't know what to say. Was she joking? Was this a new way of flirting? I laughed nervously, but she didn't. She just sat there, staring at me with this look of complete indifference. Her words hung in the air between us, suffocating any chance of light conversation. "You're just predictable, you know. I don't want to be stuck in a rut forever," she continued as if it was the most casual thing in the world. "I need more. I need someone who keeps up with me. You've just stopped trying." I sat there stunned. I don't know what was worse, the fact that she said it, or the fact that it sounded so final. It wasn't a request for change. It was an ultimatum. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but all I could do was sit there, feeling the weight of her words. The truth of it stung more than I cared to admit. This wasn't just a comment about our relationship. It was a declaration. I was boring. I was too predictable, but I didn't know what to do next. All I had ever done was work hard to make her happy. Yet, here she was, saying it wasn't enough. And the worst part? I didn't even know if she still loved me. The comments didn't stop after that night. It was like she had unlocked something in herself, and she was finally speaking her truth, whether I liked it or not. Over the next few weeks, Sarah seemed obsessed with the idea of more. More experiences, more luxury, more adventure. I had always thought that when you loved someone, you gave them your best. But now it felt like nothing I did could fill the ever-growing gap between us. At first, it was subtle. She'd send me links to designer shoes, show me vacation spots on Instagram, or hint at the latest tech gadgets she wanted for Christmas. It didn't seem like a big deal at first, just normal desires, right? But as the days turned into weeks, I started to feel this constant pressure, like I was being asked to be someone I couldn't afford to be. She'd talk about how other people had it better, how their partners took them on spontaneous trips, bought them gifts just because, or had the kind of life she dreamed of. And here I was, working my ass off at a desk job, trying to pay the bills, while she was out chasing what felt like an endless fantasy. You know, I can't just settle for average, she told me one night, her voice soft but loaded with meaning. I want to live a life that's exciting, that's different. I want to be with someone who can keep up with me. It wasn't the first time she'd said something like that, but this time it stung. I was the one who had been working long hours, who had been saving up to give her the life she wanted. And yet, no matter how much I did, it was never enough. It felt like I was drowning in her demands, and yet I couldn't bring myself to say no. I realized then that this wasn't just about money. It was about her need for something I couldn't provide. And no matter how hard I tried, it wasn't going to be enough. I was becoming more than just her partner. I was her provider. And I didn't know how long I could keep up with it. The pressure continued to mount. It wasn't just about occasional gifts or nice dinners anymore. Sarah started hinting at bigger, more extravagant things, like a vacation to Bali or a designer handbag that would cost more than I made in a month. She'd show me pictures of her friends with their new luxury cars or talk about how her coworker's boyfriend took her on a surprise trip to Paris. Every time she mentioned it, it felt like a silent accusation. I wasn't doing enough. Why can't you be more spontaneous? She'd ask, casually tossing the question into the conversation while we were watching TV. Other people get to live these amazing lives, but we're just stuck in this little bubble. It's not that hard to live like that. I tried to explain to her that not everyone could just drop everything for a last-minute trip or spend thousands on a whim. But she didn't get it. To her, money wasn't a problem. It was a means to get more, to do more. And what hurt the most was that she seemed to expect me to be the one to make it happen. The more I worked, the more she seemed to want. It wasn't just the material things anymore. It was the lifestyle. She wanted us to be that couple, the ones everyone envied. The ones with the perfect Instagram feeds, the perfect vacations, the perfect everything. But no matter how much I gave, it never seemed like enough. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. One night, after yet another conversation about how we needed more excitement, I snapped. "What do you want from me, Sarah?" I asked, frustration lacing my voice. "I'm working as hard as I can. I'm doing everything I can for us." She stared at me blankly, as if she didn't understand why I was upset. "I just want to feel like we're living, not just surviving. Life is too short for mediocrity." Those words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about how she saw me. I wasn't good enough, not exciting enough, not enough for her vision of the life she wanted. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of her expectations. And yet, I couldn't see a way out. I wanted to scream. But instead, I just sat there staring at her, the silence between us growing heavier with each passing second. It wasn't long after that night when Sarah came to me with an idea. She had been talking about it for a few days, dropping hints like, "You know, I could totally make a career out of this. And I think people would love to hear about my lifestyle." I didn't really think much of it. assuming it was just another one of her passing interests. But then she sat me down one evening after dinner, her face illuminated by the soft glow of her phone screen. "I think I should start a TikTok account," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "I can document everything, my life, my fashion, my travels. I'll be the next influencer. I could make money off this. It's the perfect opportunity." I stared at her, trying to understand what she was saying. "You want to become a TikTok influencer?" I asked, trying to wrap my mind around the idea. "Exactly," she said, her voice almost bubbling with enthusiasm. "I could do lifestyle videos, reviews, and fashion hauls. People will follow me. They'll send me free stuff. I could make a lot of money, maybe even get sponsored." I didn't know what to say. The thought of her putting more of herself out there, relying on strangers for validation, made me uncomfortable. But I didn't want to rain on her parade, so I just nodded. "Okay, if that's what you want to do, then go for it." She smiled at me like she had just found the answer to all of her problems. I watched as she set up her account, her fingers flying over the screen as she shared details of her dream life. Her first video was simple enough, introducing herself, talking about her journey, and showing off some of the things I had bought her over the years. But as the days went on, the content started to change. It was no longer just casual posts. It became a performance. The glam shots, the perfect angles, the endless streams of luxury products. Everything was curated, carefully designed to get attention. Wasn't blind. I saw what she was doing. She wasn't just sharing her life. She was selling it. And more than that, she was selling me. She'd casually slip in mentions of how hard life had been for her before she met me, or how lucky she was to have such a generous partner who could afford her the life she deserved. The videos started to get more personal, more like confessions. "I just want more," she'd say, her eyes looking straight into the camera. "I don't want to live a boring life. I want to be free. I want to be happy." It hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about her dream anymore. It was a subtle way of saying I wasn't enough. I wasn't exciting enough, rich enough, or interesting enough for her. And the worst part, she was getting attention. People started commenting, praising her for her beauty, her confidence, her lifestyle. They didn't see the cracks that were beginning to form, or the fact that she was using me as a backdrop for her narrative. I didn't know it then, but this would be the beginning of the end. It all came crashing down on me one evening, weeks after Sarah's TikTok took off. By then, I had already been feeling the shift in our relationship, but I was still clinging to the hope that maybe it was just a phase. Maybe it was the stress of her growing online presence, the endless content creation, or maybe it was something else, but I hadn't seen it coming. I came home from work early, hoping to surprise her. I had a dinner reservation at her favorite restaurant, a gesture I thought would bring us closer. But when I walked into the living room, I was met with something I wasn't prepared for. She was sitting on the couch, her phone in hand, watching a video she'd just uploaded. Her face was flushed with excitement. "Look, babe, my latest video is going viral. Look at all the comments," she said, practically beaming. I looked at her, my stomach sinking. I forced a smile and sat next to her, trying to keep things light. "That's great, babe," I said, trying to sound genuine. "I'm happy for you." But then, as I glanced at the screen, something caught my eye. A comment. One that stuck out like a sore thumb. "She's so lucky to have a partner who gives her everything. I bet he's the boring one, though." I didn't know what to say. I just stared at the comment, feeling the sting deep inside me. Sarah noticed the silence and looked over at me, her expression faltering for the first time in weeks. What's wrong?" I turned to her, my heart racing. "You're using me, Sarah. You're turning our life into content, using me as your personal ATM, your prop for your lifestyle. And now, you're making money off it. This isn't just about TikTok anymore, is it?" She looked at me, her eyes wide, then back at her phone, almost as if she was processing it but not really hearing me. "You're overreacting," she said softly, like she was trying to calm me down. "It's just a bit of fun. It's not that deep." I could feel the anger building up in me, but more than that, it was the complete emptiness. I had tried so hard. I had given everything, from my time to my money, to give her the life she wanted. But here I was, nothing more than a background character in her story, a punching bag for her insecurities. She kept scrolling, oblivious to the fact that every word she spoke was pushing me further away. "I've been working so hard, Sarah, and you keep asking for more. It's never enough, is it?" I said, my voice shaking now. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence told me everything I needed to know. I stood up and walked out, my heart heavy with disbelief. The night I had planned for us, a night where I hoped we could reconnect, had turned into a moment where I realized the truth. I wasn't just losing her emotionally. I was losing my sense of self, too. I didn't want to admit it, but in that moment, I felt like I had nothing left to give. I wasn't just boring, I was invisible, and that thought, the one I had never allowed myself to entertain, settled deep in my chest like a stone. The next few days were a blur. I was walking around in a haze, replaying everything over and over in my head. I could feel the emotional weight of the past few months pressing down on me. No matter how much I tried to explain myself, no matter how many times I told her how hard I was working, Sarah still seemed to see me as a tool, something to provide her with the life she wanted, without any regard for what I needed in return. I couldn't do it anymore. The thought of another day spent drowning in her demands made my chest tighten. The worst part was that she didn't even seem to notice how much I was suffering. She'd smile at me, make small talk about her growing TikTok following, and go on about how she was so grateful for everything I'd given her. But it wasn't gratitude. It wasn't love. It was control. One evening, after another of those fake happy dinners, I couldn't stand it anymore. I had been biting my tongue for months, and now I felt like I was suffocating. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was okay. I wasn't okay. I stood up, suddenly feeling the weight of all the months I had spent in denial. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it was enough to stop her in her tracks. She looked up at me, wide-eyed, and then, in that way she had grown accustomed to, tried to brush it off. "What are you talking about, leaving?" "We're fine." "No, Sarah," I said more firmly this time. "We're not fine. We're far from it. I've given you everything I have, everything I can, but it's never enough for you. I'm exhausted, and I'm done." She didn't say anything at first. She just stared at me, blinking slowly like she couldn't process what I was saying. "What do you mean, done?" "You're not going anywhere," she said, her voice starting to sound more desperate. I took a deep breath. "I'm leaving. I can't keep living like this. I'm done being your ATM, done being your backup plan. I'm done with this relationship." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I grabbed a suitcase from the bedroom and started packing my things. As I moved through the house, Sarah stood frozen, watching me in disbelief. "You're just going to leave me? After everything I've done for you?" Those words stung. "Done for me?" I repeated, looking at her. "What have you actually done for me, Sarah? What have you given me in return?" I finished packing the last of my things, and the silence between us was suffocating. But it wasn't a silence of peace. It was the kind of silence that cuts through you like a blade. The silence of realization that everything I had given her had been taken for granted. The dog was the last thing I grabbed. I couldn't stand the thought of leaving him behind. He was the only real companion I had left. As I walked toward the door, Sarah finally spoke again, but this time there was no anger in her voice, just something that felt like desperation. "You can't do this," she whispered. "We're married. You can't just walk away." I turned to face her, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel guilty. "I'm sorry, but I can. I need to save myself." With that, I walked out of the door, the sound of the latch clicking shut behind me echoing in my ears. The weight of the finality settled in, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a small, fleeting sense of relief. It wasn't over yet, but this was the beginning of me reclaiming my life. The first few days after I moved out were a blur. I stayed at a friend's place trying to get my head straight. The dog and I had our routine. Walks in the park, quiet evenings watching TV, and no more pretending that everything was fine. For the first time in a while, I felt at peace. I didn't have to worry about her constant demands or the suffocating weight of her expectations. I could breathe again. But then the notifications started. At first, it was just a text here and there from Sarah, asking if I was okay, if we could talk. But it quickly escalated. The messages went from casual check-ins to outright begging. "Please, come back," she texted. "I need you. We're a team, remember?" I didn't respond. I didn't know how to. I had left because I needed to finally take care of myself, and I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me into going back. But it didn't stop there. One night, after a particularly exhausting day at work, I found myself scrolling through my phone and I saw a new video pop up on my feed. It was Sarah. The title was something like, "Struggling and Alone, the Reality of My Life Without Him." My stomach sank. I clicked it, and there she was, sitting in the same spot where I had spent so many nights. But now, everything about her seemed different. Her hair was messy, and her makeup was smeared. She looked like she had been crying for hours. "I'm not okay," she said into the camera, her voice shaking. "I never realized how much I took him for granted. He was everything to me, and now I have nothing. I'm so lost without him." She continued, detailing how hard things had been since I left, how the life she had built around me was now falling apart. "I can't do this on my own. I need him back," she said, her eyes filled with desperation. "If you can help in any way, please just send something. Anything." I watched, my heart twisting in a way I didn't expect. She was begging. But it wasn't just for me. It was for validation. It was for attention. It was the same person who had once belittled me, telling me I wasn't enough, now using her pain to attract sympathy and money from strangers. The video hit me harder than I wanted to admit. The woman who had once called me boring, predictable, and not enough was now publicly humiliating herself. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anger. I felt free. The weight that had been crushing me for years, the expectation that I was never good enough, suddenly didn't matter. She kept posting these videos. Each one became more and more desperate. It was like she was performing a new role, victim of her own decisions, trying to salvage whatever was left of her image. But this was different. This wasn't the Sarah I had married. This was a woman who had built her entire identity on social media validation, on the idea that she was untouchable. Now she was exposed, and still I didn't respond. Not a word, not a message. I knew deep down that this was her moment to face the consequences of her actions. And as painful as it was to watch her spiral, I couldn't go back. I couldn't be the one to save her. A few weeks passed, and the messages from Sarah grew less frequent, but the TikTok videos continued. The comments, the likes, the followers, everything she wanted was there, even if it wasn't in the way she had originally envisioned. Her videos went viral. People commented, offering their sympathy, their support, and some even sent her money. The donations ranged from small amounts to a few $100s at a time. People were rallying behind her. They were sending her cash, not because they genuinely cared, but because she knew how to manipulate the situation. Watching all of this unfold felt like a twisted version of déjà vu. This wasn't the woman I had fallen in love with. The Sarah I knew would have never begged strangers for money, would have never put her emotions on display in such a raw, public way. But now, there she was, broken, vulnerable, and yet somehow thriving in the attention she was getting. And I couldn't help but feel satisfied. Maybe it was petty. Maybe it was cruel. But after all the years of her treating me like I was just a stepping stone to her dreams, seeing her scramble for validation felt like the universe was finally giving her a taste of her own medicine. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. She had spent so long building an image of herself that she couldn't maintain. Now, the truth was out there for everyone to see. There was a strange satisfaction in knowing she was getting everything she wanted, but not in the way she expected. She had sacrificed our marriage, our connection, all for the life of fame, material things, and hollow attention. She had put herself on a pedestal, thinking she could have it all. But when I left, she was forced to confront the reality of her own choices. I knew the kind of woman Sarah was, and deep down I understood she would find a way to bounce back. She always did, but I wasn't going to be there to pick up the pieces. She had made her bed, and now she was lying in it, whether she liked it or not. I had made the right decision, and I knew it. And yet, even though I felt empowered, I couldn't stop myself from checking in on her updates. I couldn't entirely turn off the part of me that once loved her, the part that still wanted her to be okay. But no matter how many times I saw her smiling in front of a camera, her words of, "I'm learning, I'm growing," just seemed hollow. I finally realized I wasn't the one who needed fixing anymore. I was free. It had been over a month since I moved out. I was adjusting to my new life, learning how to enjoy the quiet, how to be content with myself again. I was getting back into the things I loved, working out, reading, reconnecting with old friends, and, most importantly, I was beginning to see who I was without Sarah's weight dragging me down. The dog and I were thriving. But then, as if out of nowhere, something unexpected happened. I was scrolling through my phone one night, absent-mindedly checking social media when a video caught my eye. It was Sarah. Again. She looked different this time. She wasn't the glamorous, filtered version of herself she had been posting. This time she was raw. Her makeup was minimal, her hair unstyled, and there was a heaviness in her eyes. She was sitting in front of a simple backdrop looking defeated. "Hey, everyone," she began, her voice quiet but steady. "I know a lot of you have been following my journey, and I owe you all an apology. The truth is, I've made some huge mistakes, and I've hurt someone who didn't deserve it." I sat up straight. I wasn't expecting this. I had seen her in her flashy, perfect world of followers and likes, but now this was something different. She continued, her words slow, measured, almost rehearsed. "I treated my husband, the man I loved, like he was nothing more than a source of money and validation. I made him feel like he wasn't enough. I used him. And I'll never forgive myself for that." My stomach twisted as I listened. Was this real? Was this the same woman who had torn me down, who had told me I was boring and predictable? She went on, her voice cracking at times, but she never directly mentioned me by name. Still, it was clear who she was talking about. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm learning. I'm realizing that no amount of money or attention will ever fill the emptiness I've been running from. And I'm sorry to anyone I've hurt in the process." The words were there, but they felt hollow. She was crying, but the tears seemed more for the camera than for the person she had actually hurt. I couldn't help but feel a surge of something. Anger, maybe? Or perhaps bitterness. She was asking for forgiveness, but she had never once directly apologized to me. Instead, she was begging strangers for sympathy, trying to clean up her image in the process. And then, in the middle of her heartfelt apology, something struck me. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't angry anymore. I was numb. The woman I had loved, the woman I had sacrificed everything for, had been replaced with this new persona, someone who would say anything for views, for validation, for a second chance at the life she thought she deserved. But I was no longer part of that narrative. I wasn't her storyline anymore. I turned off the video. I didn't need to watch it. It didn't matter how much she begged for forgiveness or how many people were swayed by her emotional performance. She had already shown me who she was, and I had walked away from that version of her. I was done. And this time, I wasn't looking back weeks past after Sarah's public apology, and I tried to move on. I focused on myself, on rebuilding what had been broken inside me. The dog and I spent countless hours at the park, just enjoying the simplicity of life. I met new people, had long conversations with old friends, and found myself smiling more often than I had in years. But deep down, a part of me still wondered if I had made the right decision. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was loneliness. But there was still a lingering question in my mind. Could we ever fix this? Then, one day, Sarah reached out. I had been ignoring her calls, not because I hated her, but because I had finally realized that I needed to let go of the past in order to move forward. But this time, she didn't call. She sent me a text. "I need to see you. It's important. Please, I just want to talk." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe this was the closure I needed. Maybe she had finally come to terms with everything and was ready to apologize properly. I arranged to meet her at a quiet cafe. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a corner table, nervously sipping her coffee. I could see the exhaustion on her face, the same exhaustion I had seen so many times before, the look of someone who was always chasing after something they could never have. But there was a different energy about her now. It was as if she had finally realized that the things she had been chasing weren't worth the cost. She looked up as I sat down, her face softening. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, her voice trembling. "I almost didn't," I replied, my heart racing. "But I need to hear what you have to say." She took a deep breath and let out a shaky sigh. "I owe you everything, and I've never truly apologized for how I treated you. The truth is, I was so caught up in myself that I never saw the damage I was causing. I thought I needed all these things, money, status, attention, but it was never about that. It was about me trying to fill a void I couldn't even name. And in the process, I pushed away the only person who ever truly cared about me." Her words hit hard, but they didn't sting the way I thought they would. There was no satisfaction in hearing her admit she was wrong. No sense of, "I told you so," it just felt empty. I nodded slowly, but I didn't say anything right away. "Sarah," I said after a long pause, "you can apologize all you want, but I can't be part of this life you've built anymore. I've been your everything. I've given everything, and I was never enough. You never really saw me, Sarah, and that's why I left." She wiped away a tear, but it wasn't the same Sarah I remembered. The person in front of me now seemed broken, humbled, but it didn't make me feel anything close to the love I once had. The distance between us was so wide that I wasn't sure it could ever be crossed. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've lost you. And I don't blame you." There was silence between us for a few moments, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a strange sense of peace. The woman I had once loved, the woman I had spent years trying to fix, was now asking for forgiveness. But this time, I didn't feel the need to save her. "I'm sorry, too," I said, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. "But I'm done." She nodded slowly, accepting it. And that was it. The final piece of our relationship was now gone. There was no dramatic explosion, no big argument, just the quiet, painful understanding that we had both changed, and we were no longer what we once were. I stood up to leave, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't look back. It's been months since that final conversation with Sarah. I've had time to reflect on everything. And while it wasn't easy, I've come to realize that walking away was the best thing I could have ever done for myself. It was painful, don't get me wrong. There were nights when I would lie awake, wondering if I'd made the right choice. The what-ifs would creep in, and for a brief moment I'd question myself. But each time, I would remind myself of the truth. I wasn't happy. I wasn't thriving in that relationship. I was just surviving. In the time since, my life has taken a completely different turn. I've thrown myself into things I had abandoned for so long. The dog and I spend more time outdoors, hiking, exploring new places. I've rekindled friendships I'd let fade and even made some new ones along the way. I started a project I had always dreamed of, something that's been sitting on the back burner for years. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I have a purpose again. I'm not just existing for someone else's dreams. I'm living for my own. As for Sarah, I see her posts now and then. She's still out there, chasing her TikTok fame, still posting the pictures and videos that showcase the life she's carefully curated. And it hits me every time. This is not the woman I knew. She's playing a role, trying to convince herself and the world that she's moved on, that she's thriving, that she's fine without me. Maybe she is. Maybe she's not. I'll never know. And honestly, I don't care anymore. I haven't responded to any of her messages since that day we met for coffee. There's no point. There's no need to reopen old wounds. I've finally understood that I am worthy of someone who appreciates me, not just the things I can provide. I've learned that my value is not measured by the number of material things I can give or the validation I can offer. Looking back, it's strange to think about how much I was willing to sacrifice for someone who didn't see me for who I really was. But I don't regret it. I'm thankful for the lessons it taught me. And if anything, I'm grateful for the strength I found in myself when I thought I had none left. The door with Sarah is closed. I've turned the page, and for the first time in years, I'm not holding my breath waiting for someone else's approval. I'm free.